Hello everybody, my name is Michael Laubscher and I'm soon to be jetting off to the Lower Zambezi National Park in Zambia. This will be my second visit and I'm extremely excited to get back. So if you want to hear about the 5 things that I'm most excited about, stay tuned. I head to Zambia next week, Monday. I fly out to host a privately guided safari where I'm going to be hosting 2 guests, husband and wife, and I am over the moon knowing that I'm heading back to this very special place. Mike Sammy has recently returned from our scheduled Lower Zambezi tour, being the Treasures of the Lower Zambezi, and they had an incredible time. If you've seen some of the updates online, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, at the end of this video, that is my 5th highlight or 5th thing that I'm most looking forward to during this trip. But now, as I'd mentioned, we are heading into the Lower Zambezi on Monday. We're spending 4 nights at Kutali Camp and 3 nights at Chula Island Camp. I then come back home, and about 4 days later, I head back into the Lower Zambezi to host another privately guided tour, 2 nights at Kutali Camp and 3 nights at Chula Island Camp. This particular guest would have had done some South Luangwa travel before coming into the Lower Zambezi. But yeah, this is a really incredible little place. Myself and Johan discovered it and visited it the first time last year, hosting a scheduled tour, and it blew our minds. If you saw that trip report, you'd know what we're talking about. If not, go back into the blog, click on that link, and watch that trip report. It was a really memorable safari experience. Now, as I'd mentioned, we making use of the classic Zambia camps, being Kutali Camp and Chula Island Camp. And on both itineraries, we're staying at Kutali Camp first. Now, this is slightly further north and up into the reserve, where we will be on the banks of the Zambezi River. That camp is set up so beautifully, with wildlife in and around the camp every day. We'll get to more about that in just a while. But from your rooms, you can see elephants in the Zambezi River, you can see hippo, and all sorts of animals moving along these banks. But for the most part, in the water itself, you'll get to watch elephants crossing from Zimbabwe into Zambia or from Zambia into Zimbabwe. But a great little setup of a camp. The rooms are extremely comfortable, very basic and rustic in a sense, but it's all we need. It's all you really want, especially for a camp in an area like the Lower Zambezi. You don't want to be encaged in walls of concrete. You want that open space and that freedom so that sounds can travel in. You can feel the breeze blowing at night, and you can smell whatever animals moving around your tent at night, may it be hippo, buffalo, whatever it may be. So really cool way to kind of glamp, if I may, out in the middle of Africa. And where this particular camp is set up it is so beautiful under those, it's literally towering winter thorns that this camp is based in. And the scenery in and around camp is absolutely spectacular. The camps are pretty much set up in the same way. If you take Chula Camp, for example, Chula Camp are also pretty much like a stretched, spread open marquee tent with no walls. There's just kind of a big marquee tent as the main area. And then the tents itself have obviously a solid roof, and around the sides, open mesh, which you can close up. I recommend keeping them open. But then the bucket showers, the outdoor bathrooms, these big mesh walls and windows all around you so that you can see and smell and hear everything. But like I mentioned, the camps are very much set up in a similar way, being very minimalistic, but pretty much every single thing that you do need in a camp. And then the areas obviously differ quite a bit. So as I'd mentioned, Kutali Camp is this beautiful winter thorn forest that it's within. And then on Chula Island, your camp's pretty much situated in and amongst massive Natal mahogany trees. So very shady, a bit more kind of a dense environment, but it's really cool because Chula Island is exactly what it is. It's an island. We are the only people on that island. So you ferry across the Discovery Channel on a big raft, get onto the island, you meet your guides on that side, or they go across with you. You get your vehicle on that side, zoom into camp, spend your night, next morning, come back to this raft, zoom across, get onto your safari vehicle on the other side, and off you go on your morning activity. So it's quite a wild feeling knowing that you are the only person or only group of people on this big piece of land and this massive chunk of island right in the mighty Zambezi River. So really cool setup, really great camps. And that's probably the first thing that I'm really looking forward to. Is I recall from my experience there last year, the camp staff were incredible. The stories we shared, the moments we had chatting around the fire at dinner, our guides were phenomenal. The food was absolutely spectacular. We've had guests on that trip last year who have traveled extensively over the last couple of years with us and then prior to meeting Wild Eye, and they all said it's probably the best safari food they've ever had in their life. So food is top notch, the camp is incredible, the locations are spectacular. So really looking forward to getting back to camp and being with the Zambians on the ground in their homeland and just learning and experiencing and sharing stories and laughing. Speaking of the camps, and as I'd mentioned, there's a lot of movement of animals in and around camp, more so at Kutali, where you generally find a lot of elephant coming into camp, disturbing your lunches and lightroom sessions throughout the day when you're sitting in the main area. And when I say disturbing, I don't mean like they destroy the experience, they enhance it. But generally your lunch does get cold, because when something like that happens and they're walking into camp, you will reach for your camera or your phone and document this cool moment as this animal's moving through camp or feeding on the banks of the river. Obviously, we manage it in the safest possible way. We stay within that enclosed area if they are on that level. But if they go down into the riverbeds or into the banks of the river, we can then approach slightly closer and document and enjoy a moment with these tranquil elephant. And then coming into camp late in the morning, you often find there was one big bull that always spent time in and around Kutali camp when we were there. But photographing this guy and documenting him in either from the vehicle or from the main area of the camp itself, from where the lunch table is and the bar, you, like I said, you have these towering winter thorn trees, which, if you get the angle right, it kind of makes it look like this cathedral tunnel, which is, and we got a few shots like that last year where we were photographing this bull walking towards us, and you just have these trees kind of growing and intertwining at the top. Absolutely breathtaking. So I'm really excited to get back for that, because the safari doesn't end as soon as you get back into camp. The safari is a continuous thing out there, because there's either elephants in the water, hippo around, elephants in and around camp, buffalo, whatever it may be. I mean, we had leopard and lion in camp last year. Obviously, this was nighttime, so we didn't get to photograph them, but we could hear the commotion of these animals in camp, in Kutali camp last year. Speaking of forests, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Mana Pools National Park, which is literally pretty much just across the river, the Zambezi River, on the other bank in Zimbabwe. And if you think of Mana, you think of this beautiful light. Now, the forests there are equally as beautiful. In my opinion, could possibly even be more beautiful. There's definitely a hell of a lot more happening on the forest floor in the Lower Zambezi as there is in Mana Pools. But really pretty forests, and if you time it right and you are lucky and you get some kind of animal moving in that forest, either in the mornings at first light or in the evenings at last light, you can really create some beautiful moments of these animals moving through there. But now, this isn't only home to your big animals like your elephant, your hippo, your buffalo. This place is teeming with cats. We had incredible cat sightings last year. We had numerous lion sightings. We had a moment with a lion roaring, sitting on this like termite mound. But I've never heard a roar of a lion echo through this valley floor in these forests as I did on that morning. It was, wow, that was insane. I was actually listening to that video a couple of days ago when I was sourcing stuff for this video, and it took me straight back to that moment. It was a really powerful moment that we got to enjoy out there. So good lions out there, but I think our biggest luck came with leopard in the Lower Zambezi last year. And I say this because the leopard that we often got to spend time with was super relaxed, very chilled out, and we got to see them pretty much almost every single day, regardless as to if we were staying at Chula or Kotali. I mean, you can access these areas from either camp. It might just take a little bit longer to get to the Winterthorn Forest from Chula than it will from Kotali, but it is accessible. Now, as mentioned, we had great sightings of leopard. Now, we had a mom and a very tiny cub. This little cub was probably about 4 months old, 3.5, 4 months old. Very active, full of energy, full of life, and that in itself was super special. It's always great seeing mom and cub doing things, interacting, playing, the cub being adventurous, whatever it may be. We had endless sightings of this little cub. It was such a little poser and wanted to be filmed and on camera. Mom was equally as incredible and allowed her cub to do what us as photographers really wanted this cub to do. But what really blew our mind, what was really special and unique, and something that I never really heard of or seen in my guiding life, is this particular leopardess with the baby little cub. Her previous litter, the one female stuck in the area, she was about 2 years old. And this mom and this cub still interact as if they've got this bond that they had from birth. Usually when a cub reaches independence, 2.5 years old, and mom has another cub, mom doesn't really tolerate the previous litter all too well. In this scene, we had mom, this 2-year-old cub, and this little baby 3-month-old cub, 3.5-month-old cub, all interacting together, playing, grooming, feeding together. And this wasn't only a once-off occasion. This was almost every day. We had these 3 cats mingling, which for leopard, that is weird. Like myself and Johan couldn't describe what was going on here. So I've got no doubt that we are going to be in for some really great cat viewing in and amongst the forests of the Lower Zambezi. I'm very excited. Those trees, when these cats get up into these trees or even just walk on the forest floor underneath these trees in good light, it is awe-inspiring. And I really cannot wait to get back for moments with cats in the Lower Zambezi. Now that is my 3rd point. My 4th point that I'm very excited to get back for, and I'm probably most excited for this, and this is more of a water-based activity that we focus on when at Chula Island Camp. Reason being is because we get the vehicle-bound safaris and the real big action, if I may, out of the way at Kotali. We then come from Kotali down to Chula Island Camp, where we finish off either one of the safaris. And our morning activity there is still a full morning safari. You leave camp early, do a long morning safari on a vehicle, drive around, see what you can see, and we're going to get great action, I've got no doubt. And then in the evenings, once we get back in the afternoons, we have our lunch, a bit of a siesta, a bit of light room in camp. Then we go on our afternoon activity, which will be a canoeing activity along what they refer to as the Discovery Channel, one of the channels that loop around the edge of the island that we're on, and then that eventually leads into the mighty Zambezi River. Now, in this channel, we got crocodile, we got hippo, a lot of animals from the mainland, if I may, come and drink in this channel. Elephants often cross this channel, but when you are graciously floating along in this canoe, you get beautiful time with anything on the banks, may it be baboon, waterbuck. Like our guides have said, they've seen lion and leopard from the canoes before, and they just accept you there because they don't really associate you as a human. We had a magical time with a elephant bull who was just feeding on the edge. Eventually he came down to the edge to drink, but we sat right up hunkered against the edge of the channel with this big elephant just graciously doing his thing, and not fazed by us whatsoever. And just such a great experience. Another thing on a photographic aspect that I really, really love about this channel is, as I'd mentioned, there are a lot of hippo that live in this channel, away from the main river where the currents are flowing stronger. this channel's got shallower pools for them to just kind of bask in and relax in during the day, and a bit more stress-free in a calm, tranquil channel than it is in the mighty Zambezi River itself. But what I love to do while cruising along this channel, and the reason why we only do or recommend doing canoeing in the afternoons, is because of the sun. You want the sun on your back, because in the early mornings, if you head out, firstly, you're going to have the sun. You're going to look straight into the sun, which isn't going to be great the whole way along this channel. Photography is going to be challenging due to that. It's going to warm up really quick. So the reason we do it in the afternoons is because it starts off quite warm. As soon as you start cruising down, 20, 30 minutes later, it cools off beautifully. You got the sun to your back, so anything you're seeing in front of you has got beautiful light on it. But then what I love doing is, as that sun gets lower and lower and lower, there's certain pockets and pods of hippo, because these guys are so well trained. They know exactly where these hippo are resting and feeding in areas that they should avoid and do kind of wide bursts around. But what I love to do, and the guides are just so great at doing this, is you ask them, you want to shoot back into the light towards these hippo, and they nudge their canoe into the side, and they just kind of with their oar keep it as stable as possible. But then we photograph back in towards the sun, and as these hippo pick their head up and snort this water out of their nostrils, you get this beautiful kind of cloud of mist that is then illuminated by this golden sun behind them. So from a photographic aspect, I'm super excited to get back and capture a few more moments like that, because there's just such a great story there. It's moody, it's easy. So it doesn't really take much to capture such an impactful and powerful moment out in the field. That was number 4. Number 5, sadly, we didn't get to experience that last year. And as I'd mentioned in the beginning of this, if you had watched Michael Applesamy's updates or seen anything on his trip report or whatever it may be, they had a mad sighting. So going into this last year, Johan and I know that the wild dog of the Lower Zambezi are very special. It's a massive pack. I think when we were there was 29 adults that were moving together. The alpha female was about to den, hence the reason we didn't see them. They did their final kind of village tour, we called it the village tour, but they went out towards the communities outside the park and then back in. And by the time we had left, they came into den. But Michael Applesammy was recently there now. The dogs had, and like I said, these dogs are special. It's a big pack. But as the season goes on in the Lower Zambezi and it dries up and there's less and less vegetation for these animals, they lose condition. These dogs, because they're such a big pack, have specialized in hunting buffalo, particularly younger buffalo. And yes, it's probably not the easiest thing to be a part of. And before I play this, if you are sensitive to things like this, maybe close your eyes until I tell you to open them again. From now, close them. Michael Applesammy and his guests got to witness these dogs doing what these dogs in the Lower Zambezi do best. They were hunting buffalo. They managed to catch 2 buffalo, and obviously they can't necessarily kill this animal, because the way wild dog kill, it's very different to that of a lion and leopard. They don't smother and suffocate their prey. They pretty much rip them to bits, and that blood loss and that shock eventually leads to the death of this animal. So pretty gruesome, but a buffalo being quite a bit larger than their normal targeted prey species, being impala or whatever it may be, these dogs latch onto this buffalo and they just pull off chunk by chunk. So they had 2 buffalo calf this morning, which, man, it looked absolutely insane. I mean, that commotion, and there's no sound in here now because that is in itself pretty hectic. I'm not sure if in Mike Applesammy's update in his trip report, if you are going to be hearing any of those bellowing of that little buffalo or the 2 buffalo. But yeah, there was a lot of this commotion. Dogs latched on, doing their thing. But all this commotion obviously drew the attention of 2 dominant male lion in this area, who came moving into this area, and then eventually they decided to kind of pull rank. Lions obviously outcompete wild dog, so they ran in, they chased off the dogs, and then ultimately at the end of the day, managed to take advantage and take over the 2 carcasses, being the 2 buffalo calf that the dogs were latched onto. And then they obviously got to enjoy their meal. That being said, the dogs obviously did feed a bit, obviously not enough, and you can open your eyes now if you'd like. But that kind of interaction is the 5th point that I'm really excited for, because I've seen dogs hunt, I've seen them, but it's usually such a quick thing because they're such effective hunters. But being able to be a part of dogs hunting buffalo, that is something pretty much unheard of. And that is what I'm really excited to witness. And as gruesome and as it sad as it sounds, and it's not that I can't wait to see a buffalo die, a slow, horrible death. It's just the rarity of that moment is what I'm really excited for. So I've got high hopes. I'm hoping those dogs are either still denning when we get there, or because the pups won't be as big and fit and strong yet, they probably won't move all too fast. So really hoping for some cool dog action. But those floodplains in that area is typically where the dogs stick around for the most part, because that's their hunting ground. And from a photographic aspect, as you would have seen in those videos, if your eyes were open with a buffalo, nice and open and easy to photograph and document that experience. And so, yeah, that's pretty much my 5 highlight points that I'm really excited about for in this return, or 2 returns into the Lower Zambezi. Over and above all the crazy animal sightings, let me just reiterate, the camps itself, Classic Zambia, have created such a perfect little gem within a hidden gem in Africa, being the Lower Zambezi. Their 2 camps are all you need. They are perfect. They are great. And I know we had an incredible time there last year. Mike just loved his time there now, and I've got no doubt that my next 2 trips coming up in the next kind of month and a half there, well, end of this month being July, and then into August is my second one. They're pretty much back to back. I've got no doubt we're going to have a spectacular time. I'm excited to see the staff and familiar faces there. They're always happy, friendly, welcoming. And yeah, if you ever want to experience the Lower Zambezi, I think my trip for 2025 is full. 2026, I think I've got 3 spaces left there. So there's a few spaces. I know Johan's got a few spaces on his. But this destination is, like we said, a hidden gem, and people are slowly discovering this place, and there's damn good reason for it. This place is spectacular. So if you've got questions about it, if you're not too sure about the Lower Zambezi, where it is, what it's about, please get in touch with me. I'll happily set up a call when I have time after what's going to be a crazy 2.5 months for me. But we'll find time. We can chat about it, and we can answer your questions, and then hopefully see you in the Lower Zambezi, because trust me, it is so, so worth it. But that's about it. I will try and update you as and when I can from the field about my up-and-coming trips to this special place. But if you have questions, please leave a comment in this blog. Get in touch with me directly, or in this video, in this blog, get in touch with me directly, and I'll be more than happy to assist you in any way I possibly can. But for now, thanks for your ears, your eyes, and your time. Have a great day further, and we'll chat to you all soon. Bye-bye.